Disruptors and curious minds, CEOs, founders, book lovers, we have reached the end of Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. We have a new book we'll tell you at the end. But before we get into that, I've always thought that maybe this book would end with a big Hollywood twist, that it would go into a last chapter of happiness and optimism and hope. But instead, Yuval notches it up and notches it up and notches it up, but he ramps it up. Digital empires, turning points, the end of civilization, nuclear war, cats. I blame cats. It's all the cat's fault. Chapter 11, the silicon curtain is closing.
Could it have been Schrodinger's cat responsible for this at some point?
Yes. Whenever we're connecting dots between technologies, there's always a bloody cat involved.
Seriously. So, all right, friends, we're turning, oh my God, you have a cat. Okay. So we're about to turn this up to 11, as they say in Spinal Tap. The final chapter, Mark alluded to the interdependencies between all of these different things being really interesting, but not also being exacerbated by AI. So societal interdependencies, one of the first sentences in this last chapter I thought was really interesting. So you have all of these interactions between all of these different entities, and doing the interactions manually takes a really long time. Doing the interactions by connecting these information networks, AI does that very, very well. This will create more interdependencies. It will also create more walls. Society's already walled off. He talks about the silicon curtain's going to wall us off, and this is just going to make those walls harder to navigate, easier to manipulate, and able to spin that stuff up in a worse way. I think it's gas on the fire, right?
Gas on the fire. And just when you were speaking, I had my epiphany. I've had my AI epiphany, and he mentions it on the first page of chapter 11. Computers are not yet powerful enough to completely escape our control or destroy human civilization by themselves. As long as humanity stands united, we can build institutions that will control AI and will identify and correct algorithmic errors. I don't need to read the rest, do I, of that sentence?
Because we've proven to be so good at that. Universal coordination, global coordination.
AI is not the problem.
That's a fact.
AI is not the problem. That's what this book should be renamed. AI is not the problem. The problem is us.
Well, he references how we handled the Industrial Revolution, and that led to imperialism, but also led to some awesome stuff eventually. And he talks about, hey, we muddled through, I think was the term he used, we muddled through the Industrial Revolution. What's going to happen if we muddle through AI? But let's look at the bright side. I'm going to bring a bright side into this, Mark. I really love this. This was a little bit later in the chapter. Sorry if I'm jumping, but this quote was really cool. The precondition.
You've earned the right to jump now, Jeremy. After 11 chapters, jump away.
I'm jumping. The precondition, this is a quote, the precondition for cooperation isn't similarity. It's the ability to exchange information. So let that settle in there for a minute. We think we have to cooperate with those who are similar to us. Doesn't that just perpetuate the echo chamber is what I think about. And we have to get up another level of abstraction, reference to Packy McCormack, most human wins, tying that in. If we get up to a higher level of abstraction with this, cooperating on a global level, thinking bigger than the idea of nation states, because guess what? Nation states are intersubjective realities. Let's point back to chapter 1, 2, 3, right? So
I would have loved if Zelensky would have gone to JD. Imagine nation states and intersubjective reality.
That would have been fantastic. But I think about that. That's the root of all of this. It's not about AI. It's about us and our inability to cooperate in a way that serves the greater good of all of the people, of all of us. And I know we have to protect ourselves. I know we need to find secure ways to, move about our day, but we got to start thinking higher levels, because AI is going to change the game like very, very quickly. And yeah,
I'm going to pour a big dollop of pessimism on your hope there with a simple question. And I think that Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, obviously Nick Bostrom is mentioned quite a few times in this book. We've mentioned his book quite a lot. And how many bad actors do you need? How many nefarious bad actors do you need, Jeremy?
Not many. You just need one.
Yeah. So if you're going to get humanity singing from the same hymn sheet, it's going to be quite difficult when borders don't matter, when there is no, it's either it's all of us or it's none of us.
Well, think about the nefarious bad actors. Like he mentions another thought experiment. Imagine in 20 years when there's a new group of leaders coming out that, maybe today are 8. When they become a leader, they're 28. And maybe they haven't been so careful about what they post on social media or what gets captured of all the 8 billion cameras in the world capturing you doing things that you don't want captured, right? And now someone has control over all of those things. If they have control over all of those things, I would say they have control over you as well. Oh, another point of manipulation that, again, wow, as if we couldn't dive deeper and darker into, the rough side of this.
Well, that's a nice segue into digital empires. So he speaks about digital empires. He talks about tipping points, turning points. There's the Liverpool to Manchester train, which nobody thought trains were going to do much. And then the private sector built this train between Manchester and Liverpool, and that catapulted Britain to the forefront of everything. And then a few decades later, we own half the world and we have all these dominions everywhere. He likens AI and the race to develop AI to the race to develop trains, the private industry, the private sector versus the government, public sector, and who was the most successful. That, and he likens the private AI developers of OpenAI, etc., of today versus government, and how it's mirroring that development of infrastructure. And we're at this point where we're just waiting for this turning point, this Liverpool to Manchester train equivalent in AI. And then I'm sure you noticed the Kevin Kelly quote.
I did see the Kevin Kelly quote. That was interesting. We'll have to ask him about that the next time we're on the show. But the idea behind it was he was talking to Larry Page and was like, hey, free search, like free web search.
In 2002.
In 2002, web search for free. Where does that get you? And Page responds, we're actually making an AI.
They're ahead of the game, aren't they? They're like those train builders. They're like the bloody train builders, and they know they've got to build this train.
All right, so the train builders, but then you have like the rest of the people. And I think there was a reference to why should a rice paddy farmer care about a new network of trains going through their area, and what does that mean from a bigger picture perspective? Here's where you start to worry about that a little bit, because here's the question: are smaller cogs in the wheel capable of bigger picture thinking? And when I say small cogs in the wheel, I don't mean to diminish who they are or their potential or their intelligence, but the idea that these smaller cogs in the wheel haven't achieved the levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that they're focusing on, I got to have food right now, food today, where these other people are like, hey, let's draw these train maps all over, and here's what's going to happen, and here's what we're going to be able to do. And before you know it, you blink and something new is spun up that is yet again controlling a large.
To answer your question, why should the rice farmers of the Irrawaddy Basin in Burma or the Yangtze Basin in China concern themselves about the Liverpool Manchester Railway? Because by the end of the 19th century, they were all conquered or indirectly exploited by the Great British Empire. And could the same thing happen with AI? Could it, though, where he poses that question, Jeremy? Could it? Yes. I think you just answered it.
Yep, for sure. Let's talk about cats. You showed me your nice cup, your teacup with a cat on it.
Can I just ask you a question on consciousness? Because I didn't actually think about this cup. I just chose it at random to make my cup of tea before the show. I've obviously done my notes, so there was some kind of thinking. Cats must have been there simmering away under something, so I chose this cup. I have a lot of cups.
Milk in your tea or no milk?
What do you think?
I'm going to say milk.
Of course, milk in my tea. Except if it's green tea or herbal tea, I must, for the Europeans, English tea we're talking about.
Yeah. All right, so a fateful day, September 2012, ImageNet large-scale visual recognition challenge. So we started putting together a bunch of cat images to teach computers how to recognize a cat. Throughout this challenge and this experiment, it turns out now cats can recognize, or humans, hold on, pause, bell. Computers can recognize cats better than humans. We're like, okay, well, that sounds pretty cool, cool. Meow cat generator. We get cute cats. You look at the surface level of this seems very innocent. Not that, the cat recognition immediately had the idea to be turned into something nefarious, but that technology, these little fun little experiments that we're having today could be turned into not so great things down the road, because this cat generator, part of the tech of meow generator, we look at, red wolf, blue wolf, wolf pack, right? Which are these technologies that are perpetuating the terribleness between Israel and Palestine.
Right, I'm just going to back up there before we get to Israel and Palestine. Can an algorithm identify a cat? That the competition was about identifying pictures of cats, and algorithms were notoriously bad at identifying cats until AlexNet, who was incredibly good at identifying cats, because I assume it's because we actually flooded the internet with cat pictures for billions and billions and billions of cat pictures, and it just became really good at identifying a cat. And it then demonstrated to experts the potential for rapid progress in certain AI domains, essentially image recognition.
And let me back up a hair, because I jumped quite a bit ahead there. I'm not saying the Meow generator developers knew that similar technology would be used to do other things. It's just really what hit me was the experiments that we're making today could have effects beyond the result of the immediate experiment. Was where I was headed.
Yeah, secondary, downriver, second order effects. What he doesn't say here is, because obviously when on my first read, it was like, they can only identify 96 out of every 100 cats. These cat images must be very hazy or blurry or manipulated, or the cat must look like something else to actually fail.
It's a very good point. How's your cat recognition capability? Pretty good?
If it was just 100 cats, on cats, by the way, I know it's
on cats.
On cats. We've got a show coming up with World ID, and we're talking about proving you're a human in the age of AI, thinking on paper XYZ, to check that out. But cats, no, the cat ain't falling for no bot.
That could be really interesting. So not just cat identifier, but how do we organize cats' behavior, cats' tendencies, cats' superpowers?
Yeah, how do we think like a cat?
I don't know that I want to do that. All right, here's another question as we move through this chapter. We have this idea of like supercharging the mind-body problem, which again walks us back through the history of certain religions and the Old Testament referring to humans as merely physical bodies only. The kingdom of God is of flesh and blood, until right around 1274, where the approach became a little bit more dualistic. I don't want to go too deep in the Christianity side, but the reference is rooted in an interesting question. What is the relationship between our physical bodies and our online identities? When we start doing more things online, and we start doing things online through avatars or online personas, will we care less about the problems that affect the physical world? So if we're online all the time, Mark, are we going to become less concerned with things like global warming, less concerned with things like communities that get taken advantage of, co-opted? Really interesting. So lastly on that, before I let you riff, is if society moves from identifying humans as physical bodies, if we spend so much time online that we start thinking of online personas as human people without physical representation, could we then start beginning to think of AI more as a human? That was a really interesting thread in the latter part of this chapter.
I agree with you. And it takes a couple of pages to get to that question. And while I was reading the 2 pages to get there, I almost stopped reading. I was like, this isn't really going anywhere. But then he poses the really interesting question at the end, quote, "This debate could shape attitudes not only towards organisms, but also towards digital entities. As long as society defines identity by focusing on physical bodies, it is unlikely to view AIs as persons. But if society gives less importance to physical bodies, then even AIs, like any corporal manifestations, may be accepted as legal persons enjoying various rights," which is what you said. And yeah, it makes you wonder quickly we get to that point, because people use avatars now. I think most of the world don't use avatars, and as gaming proliferates, as the next generations come through, they will. And you have your online persona, you have your real world persona, and they merge and they diverge, and they merge and they diverge. And yeah, and that it raises the question: at what point are AIs just accepted as one of us? I accept you with your strange avatar that bears no resemblance to you in real life, and I accept this thing over here, which I've given up asking whether it's AI or not. I'll just accept it for one of us.
Well, have you heard the latest news on Sesame AI, who's working on like voice creation from AI, human voice replication and creation?
Tell us more.
I didn't get a chance to dig in too much, but they've created these voice identities for as an interface to these AI systems, right? So instead of typing into the chat, you're actually talking through it. And they've been very successful in testing the relatability of these AI human voice recreations. You have that human voice that could eventually be manipulated. And then you think about phishing scams today that are bad, with the Prince of Nigeria asking you to let, his son out of jail or whatever the heck it is. What if you have like your grandmother's voice call you and be like, Mark, I need some help. That gets a little funky. Let's see.
Fortunately, most people don't answer their phones anymore. I don't.
That's a fact. Yeah. What did you think about the Veneer theory?
So I studied international relations at university, Jeremy, and I was a 21-year-old realist. Oh yes, I'm a realist. Yeah, we suck.
So let's talk. So you had, when you were going through school, so realism, as I understand, realist thinkers, it's all about power, right? It's about the attainment of power in order to achieve control. Is that a core theory that I picked out of this?
Well, I think that he explains it with Hans Morgenthau and John Mearsheimer have argued that an all-out competition for power is the inescapable condition of the international system. The Veneer theory takes it to the next step. It argues that at our heart, humans are Stone Age hunters who cannot but see the world as a jungle where the strong prey upon the weak and where might makes right. On my bad days, on my cynical bad days, like Friday, for example, about 7 p.m. GMT, I think that. But on my brighter, more optimistic days, I like his quote, as for Stone Age hunters, they were gatherers as well. I mean, they're only gathering to feed their killing sprees, but, the thing, on my brighter days, I don't subscribe to the Veneer theory, no.
Well, ... the jungle code. So the strong over the weak, the strong controlling the weak to manipulate, control, jungle theory. But guess what? This was really cool and bright at the end of this. Real jungles are full of cooperation. Let's point back, hey, just a little ding ding, mycelium networks, right? Mycelium networks. You got these little strands between the fungi that connect the dots in the trees and the enable all. It's a fiber optic network of the forest. So when you really think about it, scientifically based, there's tons of cooperation in that, where I would debunk from principle, from theory, the jungle code. But unfortunately, some people decide to live by the jungle code.
Yeah. So after the jungle code, he gets into populism again. That I'll let you, if you want to take that, you can take that. Could I just ask you a question just before that about your thoughts on data colonialism and the cocoon?
Yes, there was a quote, they referenced it: to take over a colony, you don't need gunboats anymore. You just need to extract data. So if you can extract data, you can control things. And he talks about these cocoons being these little digital empires where instead of having 2, 3, 4 superpowers in the world, we could have 12, 14 superpowers in the world that activate their wishes upon the others in a digital way instead of a physical way. The Cold War analogy was great. A hyper-rational game of chess. If I push this button, everybody dies. It's really kind of easy and straightforward. But when we have these multiple digital empires that are able to interact and cause chaos digitally, it's harder to track that. It's harder to see what's going to happen down the road because, number one, you can't spot all the interactions. Number two, you can't see where they're going to go because a lot of them are emergent, and it's hard to predict the end outcomes. That again, damn it, we're like in Scary Land again.
Well, yeah, because if the big red nuclear button, you press it, you know what's going to happen, and so mutually assured destruction permeates, and nobody presses it because they know what is going to happen. But if you have next to it a little green button, because it's AI and it's painted it green, so blue, so you trust it, so you press it, and it sends some kind of AI virus somewhere, but you're more likely to press it. A government is more likely to press it. A leader is more likely to press it because they don't know the outcome exactly.
Well, within these cocoons that he calls, you're going to have the people, and you're going to have AI in the form of bots or personas or whatever the heck it is, and just millions upon millions upon millions that are once they're unleashed in their ability to interact, the possibility of doing things is kind of endless. But here we go. It goes back to this as humans. Hey, let's just all get in a room together. Let's work it out and make sure we protect everybody. But the likelihood of that doesn't seem.
Question for you. Jeremy, going back to nation state is just
subjective reality. My favorite term coming out of this book.
Into subjectivity. So, question for you. Imagine a situation in 20 years when somebody in Beijing or San Francisco possesses the entire personal history of every politician, journalist, colonel, and CEO in your country. Every text they ever sent, every web search they ever made, every illness they suffered, every sexual encounter they enjoyed, every joke they told, every bribe they took. Would you still be living in an independent country, or would you now be living in a data colony?
So, all right, let's extend that a little bit. I think data colony. So let's extend that. You and the 12 people who lead a particular country are going to a global meeting to figure out AI. And you're like, you have these grand ideas about, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We really need to lead the charge in this and blah, blah, blah. And then the dude that has all that information is going to go to you and be like, Mark, remember this? Remember this? Are you sure you want to lead the charge in that way? Because, if you can, we're getting very Black Mirror again on a lot of this.
The way you say it, and if we follow on from the question quote I just asked you, it doesn't seem like a very difficult conclusion to come to, though. The way he paints the picture, all of our deepest, darkest fears about AI suddenly come into the light very, very easily. It's almost like a script where this A follows B, follows C, follows D, and the big climax in Act 3 is the end of the world.
But he says multiple times in this book, technology is rarely deterministic. But that sounds very deterministic.
He also numerous times says that AI isn't a technology like we're used to. He goes to pains to point out that you can't compare it to the printing press. You can't compare it to the Industrial Revolution. You can't compare it to those. It's not like for like. Everyone says, oh, the printing press was amazing, AI will be amazing. Yes, you pointed out that the printing press gave us the witch trials and mass murder. The Industrial Revolution gave us huge, huge shifts to our political, social, economic. Millions of people died. Like, there's a downside to all of it. And he says AI is not a normal technology as we're used to it. So you can't have both arguments.
Yeah, well played. So let's tiptoe into the epilogue here. Spoiler alert, if you didn't read this entire book, all we have to do is create wiser networks. That's my takeaway. We just got to create wiser information networks. Bam, done. I'm out. Bye.
Yeah, rather to create wiser networks, we must abandon both the naive and the populist views of information, put aside our fantasies of infallibility, and commit ourselves to the hard and rather mundane work of building institutions with strong correcting mechanisms. That is perhaps the most important takeaway this book has to offer. # wishful thinking.
Wow. Well, hang on to your self-correcting mechanisms. Make sure important things aren't excluded from your AI models, like the exclusion of the acts of Paul and Thecla that led to the giant growth of misogynistic views over time. That's pretty important. Something gets left out of a universal book because some guy doesn't believe in it. Look at the repercussions. Be careful what goes into your models, friends and neighbors.
Be careful what you wish for. Jeremy, last question for you. So you're going to go meet some family you haven't seen for a long time, meet some friends for a beer. They're going to go, oh, what are you reading at the moment, Jeremy? And you're going to say, oh, I've just read Nexus. And they're going to say, could you summarize it for me in like a bit of a sentence? Because I can't be bothered to read 400 pages of AI doom and gloom. What are you going to say?
Wow, put me on the spot. I would say it was the study of information networks, how they were used over time, how we can point back to historical outcomes based on information networks and what different technologies created deeper, faster, quicker information networks, and how the patterns we've seen in the past are shaping what we see in the future, which is not any grand aha moment. But now you look at the ability for all of these things to hold together. It comes back to me, the idea of controlling something like this or getting our hands around it. You got to have self-correcting mechanisms. You got to have these things that will autocorrect instead of lock down or block down all the blockades that keep you in the center of the lane as you're driving. I think that was the biggest thing. And I love the idea, you said it in jest earlier, but creating wiser information networks. What does it mean to be wise? I think to be wise is to seek true understanding, no matter your current position. And that requires a little bit of empathy for other people as you hear their view. And it also requires a little bit of vulnerability, knowing that, hey, what I know today about this subject may not be all there is to hear. It might just be a small piece of it, and I need to decouple from this belief that I'm just driven to defend it. It's basic. It's not even about tech. It's about that. That's what it's all about to me.
I like it. Good answer. Nexus, Yuval Noah Harari. I think it is an important book. I said this in the last show, and I say a lot of things in jest, but that's just my way of interpreting it. We're going to live in a post-AI world. I think the world before AI and the world after AI, regardless where you are, what you think, where you are on the spectrum, whether you're an optimist, whether you're a doom monger, whether you're somewhere in between, you cannot deny that the horse has bolted. The horse is out of the shed. The AI horse is rampaging across the earth, and it's going to change entertainment. It's going to change work. It's going to change our relationships. It's going to change the internet. It's going to change finance. It's going to change how we interoperate with each other. It's going to change relationships. It's going to change culture. How it changes, what changes, and to what degree, we're going to find out. And I think that you asked about what it's like to be wise, and I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that you got to read both sides of the story to get anywhere near being wise. And I think that this book paints a very good picture of one side of that. And hopefully we'll read a book about tech optimism next.
The big exhale from the book, and I enjoyed it as much as we were like, man, this thing was so dark. What we saw, the case he laid out from history and stair step in all of these different regimes and talking through it as information networks. I thought it was great. I definitely enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. It was dark. I feel like I can exhale a little bit, but now I'm moving forward with a little bit of.
But you're moving forward, like you're thinking about it. You're engaging with the material. This is the whole point of thinking on paper. And if you're listening to this, that's the whole point of what we're doing. Some of this it's kind of not scripted. We take notes and then it emerges as we talk. And that's why we do it, because it helps us to understand, and it will help you to understand. That's why we do it. And come and join us. What are we reading next? So Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire. I'm really excited about this book. It's by Federico. Right, so he's Italian, so we're going to say Fagin. I think that G is like a Fagin, I don't know. Can you pronounce the title, Joe?
He's definitely not coming on the show because you can't pronounce his name yet. We need to work on that.
I'm going to edit that bit out. He is coming on the show.
Wonderful. Let's do it. So this talks about consciousness, life, computers, and human nature. Mark, when you shared this with me via text the other day, it was such an immediate yes. I was just like, yes, immediately. So I'm not sure where the adventure will take us. Come on it with us. Read this with us. Buy the book. Jump in. Pop into one of these squares. We've been asking you guys for quite a while. We've had a few guests come on. We'd love to unpack this with you in real time. Help sharpen our minds. We can help sharpen yours.
Do you know where I got this book idea from? You'll like this.
Talk to me.
It was from a tweet from a man who writes a newsletter about being human. So Packy McCormack.
Back to Packy. Packy, you got to come on the show.
He posted a picture of this book, and I clicked on the book, and like you, it was an immediate, hell yeah, we've got to read this book. Federico Fagin is one of the greatest luminaries of high technology alive today. A physicist by education, he is the inventor of the microprocessor and the MOS silicon gate technology, both of which underlie the modern world's entire information technology. See, we're always tying books together. It's just magic. It's thinking on paper magic. Federico now turns his attention to consciousness and the nature of reality, sharing with us his profound insights on the classical and quantum worlds, artificial intelligence, life, and the human mind.
Buckle up, kids. Buckle up. GetOutPaper.xyz. We have two ways we push stuff out to you guys. One is this book club where we actively read, critically think on paper together. This is participatory. This is not designed to be a broadcast. This is designed to be a book club. Come in and read it with us. hello@thinkingonpaper.xyz. Drop us a note if you want to join in. Secondly, we interview some of the most interesting technological leaders, cultural leaders in the world that are painting a new picture of the way the world's going to look. We bring you backstage to ask the questions that you care about, to try and understand what it all means. If we can get better at something, send us a note, drop us a comment. This is for you. This is not for us. Off we go.
I'm going to add to that because people talk about connecting the dots. We really are connecting the dots of emerging technology. In the last 2 weeks, we've spoken to people putting data centers in space, building ion-trap quantum computers, using AI on satellites to get real-time analysis of natural disasters, a blockchain 500 brand advisor advising the biggest brands in the world what to do about AI and blockchain.
Robot pills in your stomach.
Robot pills in your stomach. We've got World ID coming to speak about proof of humanity. It's there, and all you just connect the dots, thinking on paper, X, Y, Z.
That's it for today, guys. Be curious, stay disruptive.
Keep thinking on paper, and we'll see you next time. Yeah. Goodbye.